Well, we do have communion tonight, and having just celebrated Christmas, I thought it would be good to consider how Jesus' incarnation connects to his crucifixion as we prepare our hearts to celebrate taking communion together. I'll be briefly going over a few different passages, so you're welcome to just listen because there's really not going to be enough time for you to probably turn to each of them. But the first text I'd like to highlight is Mark 10:45, where Jesus states the purpose for his incarnation when he says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus' first coming was not in order to receive his due honor and glory, but to live a life of service and humility. Our Lord demonstrated this in many ways. He did so privately, like when he washed the disciples' feet. He did so publicly by healing the sick and feeding the hungry, among many other things. But nowhere is Jesus' mission to serve more obvious than on the cross. As Mark 10:45 states, Jesus became incarnate in order to pay our ransom, which is to become our substitute and to purchase our deliverance from the penalties of our iniquity and free us from our bondage to sin and death. In other words, Jesus was born to die. And because of his death, we have been ransomed and redeemed and reunited with our Father in heaven, which is the ultimate act of humble service. The humiliation of the incarnation is stated well by Paul in Philippians 2:6-8, where he explains how Jesus, although existing in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a slave, being made in the likeness of men. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And here we see that Jesus' humility started at the very beginning of his incarnation, where he sets aside his divine majesty and glory and prerogative. But his humility does not end there. Jesus would go on to be rejected by those he came to save and crucified by those who he was sovereignly sustaining. His humility would lead to death, even death on a cross. Again, Jesus was born to die. And a third text that highlights this same truth is from Hebrews 10, verse 4-7. And there the author explains that it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. And so it is that Jesus had to come into the world as a man. He goes on to quote from Psalm 40, "Sacrifice and offering you have not desired, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, Behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, to do your will, O God." And if we think about the nativity, this is the reality that was taking place in those early narratives that we see in the Gospels of Luke and Matthew. As Mary becomes pregnant with our Lord, it is the beginning of the preparation of a body which would someday be broken and poured out as a sacrifice for sin. And so it is that as we celebrate communion, we get to see that picture, the body broken, the blood spilled. And I would ask that you would take this time to consider our Lord, who took on flesh by being born of the Virgin Mary so that he could one day pay the penalty of our sin with his own body on the cross.